I found myself getting burnt out every 5 years. I was struggling mentally, like with my anxiety about legacy. I talked to a therapist. I know that can seem like a daunting task.
Do you see mental health in photography?
It can be a very solitary endeavor, even when you're running your own business. You have to find your ways to step away from the work. I'm a perfectionist, and nothing can be done to my standard.
It's such an individual pursuit a lot of the time. You're often on your own. You're the only one that's pressing that shutter button at that time.
The people who are really good at marketing themselves tend to be the most successful in this business. There's this feeling that you need to be constantly creating content. 99% of Instagram posts don't get more than 5 likes. 99%. I remember when I was starting out and feeling really scared about raising my rates.
It's a really important topic.
Oh, nobody's going to hire me.
Would you recommend people to try or go into wedding photography?
Oh, God. This is the first piece of advice I'd give to anybody who wants to get into photography is
Mr. Casey Fatchett, welcome to the Moo podcast. Great to have you here.
Matt, thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on.
We spoke a few weeks ago on your podcast, and we'll get to the Nerdy Photographer podcast probably a bit later, which was a very enjoyable conversation. Thanks for having me on, and I'm glad I can return the favor. And I thought we'd just start by something I noticed on your profile, actually. I think this was even before we spoke last time, because I generally look at people's we're all full foul of looking at people's Instagram first, probably to kind of make a judgment on who they are. And we'll talk about that later.
A little stalking. Yeah.
Yeah. What I noticed on there was in your bio, you said love documentarian. Can you explain what that means?
Documenting love. I'm a wedding I get tired of saying wedding photographer because okay. It's not just weddings. It's, I do anniversaries and engagements and proposals and all that stuff, and it's just for me, even in portraits or whatever I'm doing, and I was actually thinking about this when you had right before we started talking now about a photo I took of my parents for their 50th wedding anniversary. I did a portrait of them, and just you can see the love between them. It's just getting that, documenting the love is a big cornerstone of what I do. I'm very much about emotional content, the emotional weight of the images that I create. And I feel that love is one of the most spectacular things in the world that we get to experience, and finding that in all of its different forms, whether it's, love between two partners, whether it's love between parents and children, friends, whatever shape it takes. I like to be there to capture that so that it can be remembered.
And you've been doing this now for a couple of decades. Let's not give away your age, but let's assume you started extremely young.
I started when I was 10.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your history without giving us a full life story, but give us an introduction as to how you got into photography, but more importantly, why such interest in capturing love between humans and weddings and kind of human interest.
I originally moved to New York City to be an actor, and when I arrived here, you got to have a dozen day jobs to pay your bills. So one of my day jobs was, doing photography, because I had always had been a hobby of mine for a very long time, and I had a little bit of training in college in photojournalism, and but not a lot of formal training. And so I was doing headshots for other actors and band photos and live band shots, and then friends of mine started getting married, and I would go, and when all this started, I was shooting actually on this camera right here. This is a Minolta XG1. Awesome. And I had a couple of Minolta film cameras that I would go to the wedding, I'd shoot a roll of film or 2 rolls of film, pick my favorite two shots out of, those rolls, blow it up, send it as like an extra gift. And my friends would say like, "Oh, this is better than the guy we hired to do this." Um, which is fine because it was one picture. I mean, when I think back on it, I'm like, I focused it all into one photo. Um, and so I was like, "Oh, well, maybe I should look into that." And I did my first wedding, and it really resonated with me, on a lot of different levels, both as like the sort of, there's a performance aspect that spoke to me as, an actor and performer, that is just like, you prepare and you get yourself super prepared, but there's no do-overs. You just have to improvise your way out if anything happens or anything goes wrong, which in the 700 plus weddings that I've done, like there plenty of things have gone wrong and I've had to, like roll with punches. I've sewn people into dresses, use the stain stick on, stuff, and, your therapist, your comedian, all these different things. And that really, kind of stuck with me. And then as I started to, I don't know, get more introspective as to why I enjoyed these things, was to then go into it and like, what speaks to me? And it's like that, those emotions of the wedding day and the love and like all around, um, are what really like sunk into me and felt like, yeah, this is what I need. Like I'm tend to be like, I'm an extroverted introvert. Um, I can have my social battery can get worn out, but I find that doing weddings actually like charges me up. I'm around, hundreds of people, and like it's just, there's just so much, love in the room and energy and positivity and whatever. Even though it can be a stressful situation, it just like it powers me, and I'll be up for. I mean, like I can come back home at, after a 16-hour day, and I'll still be like wired. Just like, and my wife will be like, "I'm glad you made it home. I'm going to bed. I know you're going to be up for another 2 hours," um, because I'm just like, so it's so exciting for me. So yeah, that's why I've continued to do it after all these years. And I was just having a conversation with someone today who was having a bit of a, I don't know, crisis of whether they still wanted. They've been doing wedding photography for 10 years, and they were just wondering if they wanted to keep doing it. And I probably every 5 years I've had like I have a talk with myself. Do you still enjoy this? Is it still what you want to do? Is this what you want to focus your energies on? And I always kind of come back to that. Like the thing that I love the most are the getting to meet new people who are in love and get to know their story and to document that and to be there with them on that journey and to help them as much as I can. I'm a helper. I love to help, not just taking photos, but like, I just like to help people.
Come and
Yeah.
help
I
my
mean, I
audience.
hope.
Would you recommend people to try or go into wedding photography? Because I'm very ignorant of it. I've never done it. It's never been it's never been something I've been drawn to. So I don't know much about it other than getting married once myself. Hopefully the only time.
Yeah.
And just seeing these guys work so hard, but having such amazing passion for at least showing that. And I obviously see a lot of wedding photographers around and about and online and stuff, and they're what you're saying, that passion for being part of a special day, sharing that day with people, help, not just wearing a camera, right? You're wearing so many other different hats. Would
Oh,
you
there's
still, like,
so much.
after all of your experience, would you still sit across from a 25-year-old looking to go into it and say, yes, do it, it's worth it?
I what I will say is, and it's funny because I just posted or like a little while ago, posted a humorous reel about this. Yeah, it's worth it if you're strong enough. It's not easy, and that's the thing. It's tougher than I think people going into it at first realize. There's a lot of, I mean, as with any photography business, if you're doing running a business, there's a lot of busy work behind the scenes that doesn't involve photography at all. That's non-creative work that can be very draining. Um, my recommendations to people would be: do you really want to do this? Do you want to give up your weekends? because a lot of weddings are on the weekends.
Mm.
Um, and luckily, I got started in this before I had a family, before I was married, and like they had a lot of um, other obligations of any kind. And yeah, I was just like, whatever, weekends don't matter to me. I mean, like that was part of my like stupid actor brain was like back then was like, oh, I can do this on the weekend and then I can still do my rehearsals during the week. And that's all there is to it. And not realizing how much business stuff went into it. So yeah, I'd say like, take a business class before, if you're going to do it. Learn how to run a business, learn about marketing yourself. It's not going to be easy. There are going to be really long days. There are going to be times when you get really tired. Um, and I would suggest if you're thinking about doing wedding photography, by all means, feel free to do that. I would suggest working with another photographer as a second photographer, as like an assistant to get a sense of what it's actually like before you go fully into it. Because I dove fully into it and had no idea what I was doing. Um, and I made a lot of mistakes early on. I'd say the first 5 years as a wedding photographer, I made silly mistakes here and there. Like my contracts, I left things out of contracts that would have helped me in the long run. I would have, like done certain things differently. I would have advertised or marketed myself in different ways. Um, Yeah, I think that the main thing would be like try it out, see if you actually like it. Because once you're actually there and you're spending like 8 to 10 hours around people who are partying, and they, it affects different people differently. For me, it's like I can be the fly on the wall and walk around the party and feel fine about that. Other people that I have been around in the industry like to kind of make themselves part of the event. That's not my vibe. They kind of like want to be like attention on them, and like to each their own. But like that's just not my style. But I'd say like try it out, see if you really like it. And you know, I see a lot of people in this industry now, younger folks, who do it for like 5 years, and then they're like, I don't want to do it anymore. I want to do something else. That's fine. You don't have to stick with it for the rest of your photography career. I am finding myself to be one of the outliers in that sense. Um, People who started around the same time as I did in my circle of photography friends in weddings, 90% of them, maybe more, have decided that they move into different types of photography. Uh, like I said, teach their own. But yeah, if you were starting out and thinking about doing it, it's not easy. You have to kind of know you have to do different kinds of photography. You're doing still lifes, you're doing portraits, you're doing event stuff like people moving around and dancing. Um, you have to be you have to be able to do a lot of different things. So it's not just like, oh, we're gonna get these pictures of these lovely pictures of people, standing all posed. It's not all there is to it. And it's, like I said, all the work behind the scenes that goes into it I think is the one thing that I know consistently gives people a bad taste in their mouth for wedding industry stuff.
I think I find that with all photographers in general. I mean, I can imagine the work involved with wedding photography, and like you said, you have to be good at so many. We think of wedding, well, we as in the ignorant people who don't do it, think of wedding photography as a genre in itself, but actually it's multiple genres packed into kind of one craft, as it were. But I think the the majority of newer photographers, or should I say, like people just getting into it, and I was like this when I started as well. You don't quite realize the admin and business skills, the entrepreneurial skills, the marketing skills, the sales skills, like all of these things that really you should have a degree for, to cover all of these skill sets that you spend. And yeah, you learn along the way, but you also waste a lot of time. You might waste you might devalue your brand, you might waste connections, networks, reputation. So I think people don't quite realize, as a photographer, whatever genre and whatever part of photography you go into, I think the business and marketing skills really, if you want to do it full time, that is, if you want to make a living out of it, you that has to come first. And because you see the most successful, I've met many photographers who are earning really good income from their photography, and they're not the best photographers in the world, right? But they are very, very good at marketing, sales, business nows, just general entrepreneurship, networking, all this kind of stuff. It
Yeah,
is something that I didn't realize when I first started. Oh yeah, it's photography. It's cool. Yeah, you just pick up a camera, go and take shots, go and do cool projects. No, like that's like 10%
yeah,
of it, right?
right. Yeah, if you're lucky, it's more than 10%,
Yeah,
for a job when you're running your own business. That's another thing. It's like you have to decide, like, especially in like the wedding world, like you could go and work for somebody else's studio and not have to worry about all of that stuff. So that's another thing to consider. But a lot of people want to run their own ship. Like they want to be the captain. That's how I am. I didn't like. I left like my other jobs that I had when I like the other like side gigs that I had when I was acting because I was making money for other people, and I was kind of like, I'm tired of making money for other people. I want to make money for me. Um, and yeah, it's the people who are really good at marketing themselves tend to be the most successful in this business. Um, I've had the conversation many times where it's like, like skill and the best photographer, like you may have never seen some of the best photographers
yeah,
in the world.
yeah.
And honestly, we look at the past and we like, some of these people that we think are some of the best photographers of their genre, nobody saw their photos until after they were dead because like, they just, worked in obscurity for their entire lives, until somebody like found all their negatives and were like, let's take a look at these. And people were like, holy shit, they were really good. Yeah, it's interesting how much that plays a part. So yeah, I would suggest. It's funny. I went to a school that had a really great business program, and my mother said like, you should take some business classes. And I was like, sure, I'll take some business classes. And I didn't. I took a lot of art classes. So I took like one business class. Um, there were all these like prerequisites you had to do before you got to like the interesting stuff like marketing. And so I was like, whatever. And then after running my own business for a couple of years, she'd be like, how's that going for you? And I'm like, I wish I took some of those business classes. Yeah, I would recommend if you're planning to get into any form of photography or running your own business, take take some business classes. Find like a wherever you are, find some sort of continuing education program or whatever is nearby you, and
And do
just
and
get a taste.
and couple it with real life experience. So be that assistant and just work, just even if it's just for a year, be the dog's body, be that humble person and just learn from, even if it's someone who you don't necessarily think is amazing, or but that's any photographer who has a sustainable and ongoing consistent business is doing something right. So you can learn
Yes.
so much from these people, and I wish I did that. I had the kind of the business side of it, but I didn't kind of, I was desperate for a mentor. And I think that the word mentor is a little bit of a dirty word these days, but I would say more of an advisor or a coach, someone that you can just watch and learn, right? Not necessarily have a structured course or structured meetings. Just be that assistant, even if it's just once a week or in your spare time, and just go and watch and learn. And there's so much you can gain from that before you have to make a decision about which way you're going. And in the meantime, you can learn, you can do homework, you can do online courses in your spare time. You don't have to do an official structured program like at university or anything. But so yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that's it just doesn't exist so much anymore. That kind of apprenticeship approach, it just doesn't, people want it now. People want to be famous on social media. People want people want everything now, right? It's like, oh, just give me,
Yeah, they don't
I
want
want to
to
be,
learn.
yeah. Yeah. They don't
They
want to
don't
be
want to take the
patient.
time to learn.
Yeah.
I I I, I would say I got very lucky. I mentioned before, like about the first 5 years were a little like not so great. But after that, I actually got a job working as the studio manager for a very like active studio. So I would go in 2, 3 days a week and work there, and I got to see how they ran the business, and I got to learn like what I would do, like what I thought, okay, that's something I should be doing, and this is something I should be doing differently than what they do, how they do, because I saw them like a not treating their clients so well, and I was like, that can't do that. Like that's not how I want. Like I gotta focus on, better client service there, and then other things were like, how they did the books and like how they, all those things that I really wasn't that familiar with. I got to go walk in and like see their system for doing things and seeing like, okay, this is how, I could adapt that to work for me in some way and have a better sense of, the business side of it. I think is great. But like you said, I think that there's a rush. People have a rush. They want to like jump into it and be, you know, I don't know. I think that our industry, it just clicked in my head was the like there's always like 30 under 30s and like those things, those sorts of things, like rising stars of whatever, those like magazine feature things, and like people, everybody was like, oh, I want to be one of those, and they don't want to take the time. I'm like, where's the, like, if, I'm not gonna say how old I am, but like awards for consistency over a long period of time, like that's the, like that's something I think would be equally as, you know celebratory as, or celebrated as, like, oh, you're been really awesome for 2 years and you're a rising star. But it's not sexy. It's just
The
not sexy.
problem,
It doesn't sell
no,
much.
and the biggest problem with that is the definition of people's. You mentioned on the 30s. It is pervasive in that generation, and I don't want to be generationist if that's a word, but
Yeah.
it's the definition of success. Usually, in my experience now, talking to so many of these people, falls in one of two categories. One is having hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, and the other one is making six-figure income like ASAP. Right? Those are the two definitions of success as a creator, photographer, filmmaker, whatever kind of visual arts medium you want to pick. And there's a whole host of issues with that. Right? Where is the definition of success that says just the pursuit of this over many years? I want to perfect the craft. Whatever comes of that, great. Like, wow, if that brings me six figures income, wonderful. If people recognize the quality of my work and want to pay for that, fantastic. But again, it's the intent behind that. There's 10,000 hours. That's a cliche, but it's fucking true, right?
It is.
Why are people not going into it wanting to master it? Like to master anything, you have to put the time in. You have to be patient and consistent. You have to have the patience to be consistent, right? So that you can look back on the body of work and go, okay, well, I evolved over time. I impacted a lot of people's lives. I hopefully inspired other people. And in the meantime, I, earned myself an income through just hard work, dedication, learning all the time, and hopefully just providing a near perfect or a good enough output that I'm happy with, whatever anyone else thinks, however many followers I've got, right? So I think this intent is completely misplaced these days, and it's driven by the face that people put on it, the face that people want other people to see them for, right? So I
Yeah.
know
There's
intent
a,
is a big part of your kind of
it
your
is. I mean, I think there's that, like, there's this facade that people put up, like, because they're just looking for, um, they're looking for likes and shares and comments and followers. And, you know, I've always been someone who focuses on the quality of connections as opposed to the quantity of things. And, um, yeah, it's sort of this like rush to I got to get to six, like you said, got to get to six figures or 100,000 followers or whatever the goal is. Um, and there's little thought about putting the work into the craft. of what you're doing. And there's a lot of this like, oh, what were your settings? What gear did you use?
Yeah.
Like thinking I can replicate this photo. I want to replicate what you did in this photo. Just all I need to know are the settings and the gear that you used, and I can make that picture. No, like well, this is the first piece of advice I'd give to anybody who wants to get into photography is learn your fundamentals. Learn the exposure triangle. Man, once you nail the exposure triangle, life gets way easier. And that's again how like shooting film, live bands, you learn the exposure. Like I've got two camera bodies. I had two camera bodies at that point. You can't switch ISO. You can't switch. It's locked in the camera, and you have a limited array of things, and you have to learn. Like, okay, lights just got real bright. I got to change my settings real fast and adjust to all of that. But yeah, intention is something I find being lost as well to trend. Like
Mm.
it's this like in the sort of the environment of Instagram Reels and TikTok and like trending things on social media, people are going for trends to get more exposure in the algorithm, so they'll reach more people, so they'll get more likes and they'll get more comments and they'll get more followers, and the cycle continues instead of saying like this is the type of image or art or whatever it is that I want to make, and finding something. And you know if you're constantly imitating other people, you're not creating something for yourself. There's also, when it comes to like, we've talked about this off recording, like intention is is important for me because you'll see these trends like there's the blurry photo trend that was like last year that kind of blew up for a while, and I think it's still kind of going on. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's like totally out of focus images. And I was thinking about it, going like, why is this a thing? And I was asking questions, and younger millennial and Gen Z and Alpha uh, folks were saying like, well, it's just sort of nostalgic for like when like looking at old pictures, film from like film, like when they out of focus. And I was like, you're being nostalgic for something that didn't exist. It's not like people were going like, I want to shoot this out of focus.
Mhm.
It's that you didn't have an autofocus, and you couldn't change your film speed, and like there's things that went into it, and like yes, sometimes it didn't come out, and I am like I would say the emotional weight of something is uh more important than the technical perfection of it. So like if something's a little bit out of focus, that's fine with me, but it's that you were more concerned, like your intent was on capturing something else, and not like my intent is not I'm just going to take a out of focus picture because out of focus is trending right now and that's going to get me attention on social media. It's I my intent is to capture what is happening here, and that might mean that there's some motion blur, or that I can't track it as fast as possible to have it be sharply in focus. you know that I find that's less important than getting the shot. That's my intent, is to get the photo. Uh, but when your intent becomes to just follow a trend, you're like I said, you're just imitating other people, and you're not like thinking about what you want to create, what it is inside of you as an artist. What is your voice? What are you trying to say about what you're creating? Um, I think you lose a lot of that to trends. Um, my wife has always said that I am anti-trend to the point of being detrimental to my career. Um, but I would say that's not true, because I will say one of the things about that I like most about my work is that it's timeless. There's no point where you're looking at it going like, oh, that's definitely from 2010, or that's definitely from 2005, or 2018 or whatever, because this was such a like a big trend at that point. You can go back and like I can post photos that I took 15, 18 years ago, and people will still think that I took it, you know, last month, because apart from some fashion differences, you know, that the look is very timeless.
Hey guys, before I let you continue with the video, just indulge me for a few minutes. I want to briefly talk about my new brand, Yore. Founded with my business partner and photographic artist, Finn Matson, we're proud to bring you a new artisanal jewelry and specialty coffee brand. Yep, what on earth do they have to do with each other or anything at all? Well, they're both our passions. They've always been another artistic outlet for me, now for over a decade. So for those that know me, coffee has been my other obsession since I was young. And as a result of it, I'm a qualified SCA coffee specialist. So when I met Finn, some of you might have seen my podcast with him when we barely knew each other, our love for art and jewelry had a home. And that home is here, House of Yore. Yore is, amongst others, an artisan jewelry label, and it's all about the art of intent for everything that we do. Our intention with Yore was to add a touch of celestial elegance and artistic expression to our visual narratives. Every jewelry piece is a statement, a reflection of your unique story and purpose. It's not just about jewelry, it's a wearable piece of art that speaks volumes. Picture this: silver or gold adorned with an actual piece of lunar meteorite. That's right, straight from our moon, making every piece as unique as the moments that we usually capture through our lenses. From limited edition lunar jewelry pieces to finely crafted 925 sterling silver and gold rings, pendants, and chains, there's something for all of you in our unique designs. We're also committed to the environment as much as possible. Our coffee is direct trade, organically produced, and locally farmed, minimizing impact on the environment as much as possible. Our jewelry packaging is all sustainable and recycled, other than the moon rock, of course. Proudly eco-friendly in both packaging and jewelry production, you can feel good about looking good. And to top it off, we offer free worldwide shipping, ensuring that a piece of lunar beauty can grace your collection no matter where life takes you. And if you ever find yourself here in Bali, please come and visit us. Our cafe and community-driven art house is a haven for creatives just like you. So before we head back into the video, please just take a moment to explore Yore's collection. And as a special treat for you, my wonderful audience, Yore is offering an exclusive discount. Head over to our website and use the code below for a 10% discount off your jewelry purchase. The link and details are in the description. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, and I'll let you get back to the video now.
I think that's important for photographers to, I don't know, it is for me. I think in 10 years time, you know, all of these people that post because it's chasing a trend, and the trend could be social media, right? We don't know where social media is going in the next 5-10 years. I doubt it's going to look like it does today. That's for sure, right? So, you know, people chasing those trends are always going to be chasing a trends. They're always going to be chasing the algorithm. And we all fall foul to it in some respect. You and I both use Instagram, and we use it for very specific purposes, but the difference is the intent, right? What are we using it as a tool for? And we're certainly not creating photos to get the most amount of reach on Instagram or whatever, or TikTok or whatever stupid platform it is. So I think I'm fairly confident that those people will be left behind. And I think it's really important if you want to. I just did a video about this, released it last night, and it was a bit of a hate on the influencer content creator kind of generation, which is kind of what we're talking about. You know, people who call themselves artists, who call themselves this, they label themselves that, and they can take a photo that looks like everyone else's because it's cool and it's trendy. They're not going to last. And I think the true artists and the real photographers not only do it in the dark, do it in behind whatever facade these kind of these platforms create. They do it behind closed doors. They don't give a fuck what other people think or say. They don't have to do it for ego. They don't have to do it for status. But more importantly, they do it like you do it. You know, they do it like I'm trying to do it, and do it over numerous years with cohesiveness, with consistency, with a story behind it, with experience behind it. And so that I can look back on my body of work, and hopefully other people can look back on my body of work in 10, 20, 30 years time and see a consistent style, a consistent story, a cohesive kind of nature of work, and almost like a legacy, right? That's a bit of a cliche, but look back and go, well, this is what I contributed to the world. And I guarantee, like, those people that you're talking about, they won't be able to do that. What, you're going to look back on your IG page in 10 years time and go, wow, look at this slow shutter photo I took. Right? There is a place for that. I love all types of photography, and those kind of images are cool. And even I've done stuff like that before. I haven't posted them, but I enjoy experimenting, playing around with different techniques. And like you said, sometimes I'm just a shit photographer and I get something like that by accident. Well, actually,
Right.
that's quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know what you think about it. I mean, it all comes down to the abundance that we have today. Everyone has a camera, right? And so this is both a good thing and a bad thing. The negative side of it is people aren't that creative. Not everyone is really creative. So not everyone has this and I'm one of those guys. I have to work hard at it. I have to sit down and have a kind of focus session about, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to say? What's my next project? How am I going to, create things around that? Some people, and I've met, they just exude that creativeness, right? They've just got it in their blood. Some people just want to kind of fit into something, right? And they have the fear of being left behind because now they've had this thing thrust into them. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I've seen all these other people as kind of social media photographers, and I want to do that. And it's easy because I just buy a digital camera, get it all done for me, stick it in auto mode, and watch a YouTube video for 10 minutes and post, chase the algorithm. Yeah, now I'm an expert. It's like, okay, but don't call yourself an artist or a photographer. You're not. You're just a digital image poster. Like, the problem is everyone has it. And so the fear of getting left behind means that they will chase these trends and they want to fit in, and then they're not brave enough to do something themselves and to put themselves out there, like, as an authentic version of themselves. Go, right, this is me. You either like it or you don't.
Yeah, I think there's listen, it's not generationally like exclusive. There are people my age who are still like chasing
Absolutely.
the algorithm and trying to get like likes and follows, and will do anything to like increase that reach instead of being. And it's like, to thine own self be true. It's like, if you need to be like, you had mentioned, like, having a cohesive style and whatever. Like, I don't want people who are listening to this to think that you have to start knowing exactly what your style is. You don't have to, and it's not like you can't evolve over time. It's not that it can't change. You're not, you're not failing if you decide, like, oh, I want to go in a different direction. We all grow. Artists grow over time and change. Look at Picasso. He learned the techniques well before he ever, decided to, like, I'm going to do something completely different. He had a solid basis in all of the lots of different painting techniques. And I think I would recommend, like, people get in there, like, dip your toes in things, do different stuff, and kind of like be willing, be courageous enough to make mistakes. Because if you never make mistakes, you're not taking chances. You're not doing anything original. You're never going to make anything original if, like, all you're doing is imitating what other people do. So if you're just in it for attention and, you want to be, internet famous for, whatever that means, then, that's, okay. But like you said, it's like, in the long run, I don't think you're gonna be remembered and have a legacy. And like, there's a part of me, like, for a while, like, I was struggling not emotionally, mentally, like, with my, like, anxiety about, like, legacy and, like, I guess just as, like, do I need to do something different? Do I need to, uh, like, all this, what impact have I had? And my wife was like, you have impacted like thousands of people at their, like the weddings, like these photos of people with family members that, passed soon afterwards or whatever. She's like, the impact that those images have is just a spider web, out into the world. And, that is an impact. That is a legacy of, like, and I opened my eyes to that, and I was, far more comfortable in my own skin and my own thoughts about my work because of that. It's not like you don't ever have a crisis of faith, if you do this for a long time. And I don't want people to think that you're going to jump into it and like you're going to be like, you're going to do everything exactly right and get a, internship with somebody else and like, and that somehow everything's always going to fall into place. It's not. There's going to be ups and downs, but you have to be willing to make those mistakes instead of just like chasing trends. Yeah, I don't know. I feel bad for people who do that. Um, I've been around long enough that I've seen like all of like these iterations of how people show their work. Like when I started, everybody had a physically printed portfolio. You had a book that you would show people in person. And then websites became a thing, and they weren't great. The first websites could not handle images, especially not video. So like you kind of like gave people a sense like, hey, I've been doing this and I'm kind of good at it. Here's a couple photos. Come see me in person and see the print. Then broadband came in, and we were able to put more like higher quality images out there. And then social media comes into play, and like there's like this just constant barrage of visual media. And it's interesting. There's one of the big pitfalls I see people falling into, and I think it plays in, like it connects to what we were just saying, is that there's this feeling that you need to be constantly creating content. Like there's just like, I gotta be posting like 3 times a week, and I just got off the phone with Meta, and like all of these. I don't know if you've seen all these posts on
Yeah.
like I
Just
just got
spoke
off
to
the phone with
Meta.
Meta, and this is what they said we need to be
That's
doing. You
just
need to
basically like calling up customer service, like, or just getting on chat.
yeah.
Like,
Also,
done anything
what do you
special?
think they're gonna say?
Yeah,
What do you think
exactly.
that is gonna say? They're gonna say,
Exactly.
keep posting,
Yeah.
keep
Keep,
creating content on our platform.
but that's why people do keep posting, because they know that if they stop posting, they will. I mean, like if you don't post for a couple of weeks, you're just not gonna have the same traction. That the whole system is built purposefully for people to use, right? So and this is the fear, is that the intent changes. The intent, and I'm talking just specifically photography here. Like we talk
Yeah,
about other social media uses all day long. There are some great uses of social media. I'm not completely, and I never do. It's, we all use social media, but it's how you use it. And I think as photographers, the intent can change so quickly behind. I would like to share my work with people because I put a lot of work into it. Maybe I want some feedback or some constructive criticism. Maybe this is my way to just share things with the world, right?
yeah,
Quickly that becomes, okay, well, I need more people to see my work. Okay. And then that becomes, well, I need to do anything to get more people to do my work. Therefore, I'm just going to post whatever the content might be. It may not, and I might be rushing an edit. I might be doing a photos I don't really want to do just so I can get content. I might now be doing some shit reels that don't really promote anything and that just detract from the whole artistry I'm trying to create. And, before you know it, you are just a sellout, essentially. So
Yeah.
the problem is, and I don't blame the individuals, I blame the system, I blame these big platforms, albeit we've kind of created these platforms. So I don't know. I think that the intent is everything, and I totally agree with you. Of course, just to go back to our point a few minutes ago, is everyone should. I still try different styles, right? I love photography, so I want to try everything. But again, there's the reason to do that. And once you start putting your work out there, you have to be sure about an identity of some sorts, and that identity really should and has to be authentic. So if it's not authentic, then you will be found out either by yourself or by other people. And that is a fact. And it might take
Yeah.
3 months, it might take 30 years, but you will be caught out. And not caught out like I'm in trouble. It's just your reputation will change. You know, you things will happen and you'll start questioning yourself about, am I doing this right? What do I want to do? You'll become confused, you'll lack clarity. And it's just not it's not just conducive to a good outcome. It's not
Yeah.
beneficial to anyone. And
I've seen. I mean, I'm not going to name the names because there's a few of them, and like it's not like one in particular. But I've seen several like well-known photographers, like their entire like world came crashing down because they got caught like plagiarizing other people's stuff on social media to have posts on social media, like completely lifting somebody else's captions, like and just like
oh
and posting them
goodness.
as if they were funny or whatever. Like, here's my little jokey thing that I said that, but now I've got 50,000 or 100,000 followers, so now a whole bunch of other people are going to see it, and they found that like people start to notice after a while. They're like,
Yep.
wait, this is the exact like this is what somebody else said like 2 weeks before, and now like you just like copying and pasting other people's tweets and like and Instagram captions and stuff just to like keep up and try to stay on top all the time, and you lose what got you there in the first place
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it was up to me, I mean, like, Nerdy Photographer is just my place to like joke about photography is a lot of the time, and I just like having fun, and it's like I want to make people laugh, and it's not about like if people get the joke and they find one, great. If they don't, whatever, I don't care. Like, this is like I used to do stand up, man. That's like if it if it doesn't land, it doesn't land. You just gotta move on to the next thing. And it's I try to take that into account with my photography socials as well. Is that like sometimes the photo you're like, this is amazing, this is a fantastic shot, blah blah blah. I'm gonna craft the best caption ever, and then you send it out there, and like 5 people see it, and that's like you're like, oh god, like what happened? Here's the thing to think about. Like, I can't remember when this was a while ago, but there was a thing that said like 99% of or Instagram posts don't get more than 5 likes. 99%
Oh wow.
don't get more than 5 likes. Um, and these, like, I've seen it happen over and over again with social media platforms where it's like there's this big, like, everybody's getting a lot of engagement, and then suddenly they throttle it. They throttle the engagement to like try to get you to boost stuff. It's a thing on TikTok, like, oh, because that's how they make money, folks. Like, you are you are creating the
Yeah, the
content.
product.
You're the product. And it's like on Instagram when people get so mad because like, or was Facebook, and now people have written off Facebook, but people on Instagram are like, I have 10,000 followers, but only 200 of them ever see my posts. Like, yeah, they want you to pay to boost your post so that your people who follow you see it. Yeah, like, I don't know. I try not to put too much faith in those sort of interactions because, like, like they can take it away whenever they feel like it. They can throttle what engagement you get. They can change the algorithm. Like, you don't want to be I don't want to be a slave to the algorithm. I'm gonna like be consistent and post the things on my different platforms that I think are appropriate for that platform. If it hits, it hits. If not, okay. Usually, most of the time for me, Instagram for my like photography business is a place for people to go and like see my most recent stuff. They've gone to my website and I say like, hey, go over and you want to see my most recent stuff? Head over to Instagram. That's the most up to date things. So
One thing I'm
yeah,
starting to find Instagram extremely useful for is broadcast lists, subscription lists, newsletter. You know, just a real audience. And I get exactly what you're saying, but think about it like this: if you put a post on and you get 5 likes, imagine sharing those photos or that photo in a room with 5 people, right?
yeah,
I fucking love that. Right. I would be grateful to have 5 people actually sit here and look, even for 10 minutes, right? Look at some of my photos. Brilliant. But we don't think about it like that. We just think about it purely as digits or robots or whatever, you know. But people, if 5 likes means people have seen that photo, they've comprehended that photo, and they've gone, I really like that. There you go. And then a
yeah,
comment is kind of the next stage. So, I mean, people just don't think like that, really. But I think, of course, I agree with you. And you are powerless once you put those photos on. If we're just talking photos, let's put those photos on you. It's hit and miss. And I think most photographers now realize, as long as you understand that system, you can make peace with it. It's fine. This is again, it's the intent. It's like, I'm going to put this photo on because I'm going to have it as part of my portfolio or something, some kind of grid where people can come on to and just see my most recent
different
work, you
things.
know,
Yeah,
which is a great use of it. It's where you get like a broadcast list, or if you want an audience, a real audience, that's where it can be quite good because you can directly reach people. People have a clear choice as to whether they're going to be part of that list or not. You can share, you can just talk to them, right? It's a big DM group. I find that
yeah.
really, really great. It's like having a big WhatsApp group or your email list, or so that's really where the audience connection can come from in the digital space, right?
Yeah, and I think that it's like it's a lot healthier mentally to get to that place where you're like, oh, this is not something I can just, you know, expect to like, get consistently, 1,000 likes or whatever it is. Like like I've seen people who have 50, 100,000 followers on Instagram, like post stuff and it's like, it only got like 150 likes. I'm like, what can I tell you? Like, it's like, don't put yourself in like you're saying, it's the abstractness of not thinking like, oh, 150 people saw that and liked it and really enjoyed it or whatever. They just like the abstraction has become like, oh, it's got to be, a certain percentage of my
Percentage.
followers,
Mhm.
and it's got to be this. Not like, oh, I connected with 150 people. Like honestly, like the thing that gets me is as a professional photographer, if you were using that to as an extension of your business, you should stop like trying to make everybody like you.
Yeah.
The best marketing advice I ever got was you shouldn't be trying to get here's always the people like, oh, you only need 2% of the crowd or whatever to, have a successful business. So people like you only need 2% of people like buying your product. But the best advice I ever got as far as marketing was you shouldn't be trying to get 2% of the 100%. You should be
Mm,
trying to get 100% of the 2%.
right.
That's the thing you need to like aim at. So when you start thinking about like, oh, I need to like get everybody who's following me to like love what I do, and like if they don't, then I'm going to be depressed. Like think about how many people do you need to like buy your product? You don't need like every single person who sees the thing to, you know, become a buyer. You need, even a small group of people. Well, you can run a very successful business. So that's like, like trying to get out of the mindset of like, I need a certain percentage of my followership to, love every single thing that I do, um, can be very healthy for you to like understand that that's not going to be helpful.
Speaking of health, how do you see mental health in photography? I mean, I think one thing is completely underrated is the value of, well, I guess the detriment of individuality. I mean, it's such an individual pursuit a lot of the time. You're often on your own. You're the only one that's pressing that shutter button at that time, and the responsibility, especially if you're leading a team of assistants and stuff. But generally speaking, you're by yourself. You're forging this path through the industry on your own most of the time. How have you dealt with that over, the few decades that you've been in it? And talk to us a little bit about your ups and downs in terms of mental health.
Uh, yeah, I mean, it can be very solitary. It can be a very solitary endeavor. Um, I think that, I mean, for me, when I started out, I was all probably attention deficit, hyper focused on, like the job, and I would stay up until like 2 or 3 a.m. editing. I was always like, oh, I got to perfect the website, and I got to do like this thing, and like I got to, there was always a job to do, and I didn't balance work-life balance. Um, it's true, even when you're running your own business, you have to find your ways to step away from the work. I found myself getting burnt out like like I said, like every 5 years, it was like, yeah, I just feel like, oh man, what am I doing? Like, what's going on? And, I've scheduled it with myself that I need to have check-ins and say like, how you feeling? What's going on? How do you feel about your work? How do you feel about your work? Like what you're actually putting out there? How do you feel about the business side of it? Like what's going on? Like, do I need to delegate something? Because that's the thing, that I am terrible. I am fucking awful at delegating anything, because it's like I'm a perfectionist, and like nothing can be done to my standard. But in the late teens, I was getting so wound up about the stuff. I had a couple of panic attacks. Um, I was so anxious about like everything that was going on with the business. I was getting ready for a wedding. I had two weddings in a row. I had one Friday night and one Saturday, and it was Thursday night. And I was like getting my equipment together for the next day on Thursday, and a piece of equipment broke, and I started weeping uncontrollably. And my wife was like, "Are you having a heart attack?" Because I was breathing hard, and I was like, "Nope, I'm pretty sure this is a panic attack." Um, and I went and got help. I talked to my doctor. I talked to a therapist. I know that that can seem like a daunting task for anybody out there if you're having those sort of issues. But like for me, it was necessary, because I was just too caught up in the race, and like to stop and think about myself and what I needed. And since then, it's taken a lot of work. I've worked very hard at it. And there have been other ups and downs. I went through, like in 2020, both my parents passed away from cancer within 2 weeks of each other.
Jesus.
Uh, and yeah, and then I was their executor. So I spent like 2 years like trying to like figure, there's a lot of pressure on
Yeah.
top of like running the business and dealing with the pandemic, and then grieving, and then all this other stuff on top of that. So like it was good to have, at that point I had like some base like of how to deal with the stress. Which for me was taking a break, taking like scheduling breaks. I think that it's one thing, especially when you're young in this business, in photography. Like we said, it's very solitary, first of all, but it's very easy to get caught up and just spend like all of your time working. Um, and I see it with like younger photographers that I know, and they'll be like, "Oh, I was up until like 3:30 editing this shoot because I was just so excited about it." And I'm like, "And you need to go to bed. You need to go to bed at a reasonable time, Like if you don't sleep, that is like one of the biggest things to like for your mental health is getting regular sleep. And I'm not saying you absolutely have to get 8 hours a night, even though you should, but like getting consistent sleep is like one of the best things you can do for your mental health. And it was also like for me, yeah, I have a very active dog. So I would schedule like times during the day. Like this is when I'm going to take the dog for a walk. This is when I'm going to do training with the dog. Like it's not a long period of time. Like I'm going to schedule a time where I get up from my desk and I am not doing work for 10 minutes. I'm just going to train my dog. We're going to do stuff. And it's fun for me because I love playing with my dog. Dog loves it. Like, but I'm stepping away from the work. The other thing that really helped was setting specific end times for when clients can contact me and for when I am going to stop doing work, and having limits. Um, I always tell, because, weddings can be very emotional. There can be a lot of like, last minute stuff. I always tell people like the week of the wedding, you can call me whenever, anytime, night or day, you can call me. But apart from that, after 6:30 at night, I'm not answering the phone. Like it's going to go to voicemail. I'm going to pick it up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I will like get that. But like unless it's like like, I'm not going to chase it because I used to have people calling me at 11 o'clock at night, and I'd be like, why are you calling me? Like I'm not going to do this like right now. Like I'm not going to like they're like, oh well, you know the wedding was 6 months away, and I'm like, okay, I'm not falling into this trap. I'm not. So that was about setting boundaries with clients, but you need to set boundaries with yourself as well. Like I'm not going to stay up. Sometimes, yes, you need to stay up, get the editing done. You might have a deadline, whatever. Like it happens occasionally, but you shouldn't consistently be like up until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then it's not good for you. It's not good for you. You need to set boundaries for yourself.
I
Otherwise, you burn
think,
out.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I get the going back to what you originally said about delegation and being professional. Again, that because it's a visual art form and you have your brain in those photos, right? Or how those photos are delivered, or how they're managed, or how a client's managed, or whatever it is, it's your name on the line. And it's so difficult as you have to put your entrepreneur hat on, not your artist hat on, right? Where it's you have to be able, if you're certainly if you're going to scale it a bit, right? And you're not going to get burnt out, it's very, very difficult. And there's no easy way to just do it. And there's no course in really learning how to do it because everyone's different. And whoever you might be delegating to is different with different skill sets, different experiences. And it's just, again, it's a human relationship that somehow you have to garner if you're delegating to people. But yeah, I think hearing you talk about that and having empathy, because I kind of been there myself as well. And as long as I think you're able to do two things: one, learn from your experiences, what's happening, and it sounds like you did perfectly. And I kind of went through something similar, and got help, was willing to kind of put my ego aside, and I didn't for many years. No, I could do this. I'm strong enough to get through this myself. I don't need any help. Everyone can fuck off, right? But we all know that just doesn't work. Having the humility to be able to go and be vulnerable with a stranger, or even not a stranger, and start talking about it, and then putting some discipline in place, right? Whether it's with, like you said, with clients or with people you're working with, like, why are you calling me 11? But why are you allowing them to call you at 11, right? So it's kind of like having that self-discipline as well, and setting those boundaries. So really difficult. When it comes to that though, I think you just want to make everything work because it's your income, it's your rent, it's your food, it's like I've got to make it work, and I don't know how long this is going to last for. You could be like swamped in a project, and then another client comes in going, I want to work with you, and you just, I've got to say yes. The
Yeah.
power of saying no is sometimes so liberating and so good for you, so that you don't end up in those situations. You don't dilute your product, and you don't dilute the quality of your work, but you also don't get burnt out, right? So I think that's really important. On the back of that, I wanted to ask you how really, because you've been doing this for so long, and I have so much respect for you for just doing what you love for so long and making a success out of it. So kudos to you for that. But I do want to know what you would be doing if money was no object, right? If you didn't have to get money from photography, what would you be doing? If you had all the money in the world, what would you do?
Hip hop dancer.
Be a what? Sorry, a pop dance.
Hip hop dancer.
Hip hop dance.
Yeah.
Come on, show us some moves.
No. I'm an enthusiastic dancer, but no, like terrible. What would I be doing? I don't know. Like there are things that if money was no object, I was actually I think I was thinking about this today. There are things that I love to do. I love to garden. I love to grow things. I spend more time in my garden. I spend more time with my dog. I go travel with my wife. Um, it's those are like what I refer to as like simple joys. They're like it's always going to be something that I love doing. I also love making people laugh, which is the entire reason I started the Nerdy Photographer was like, I'm not saying as a joke, but like to like get people to laugh about this business. It's like we're silly people in like the way that we take ourselves very, very seriously in a lot of ways. And there's just a lot of common experiences that people have. And, yeah, I'd like to make people laugh and, hang out with my dog and garden. Those are, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I mean. I think that those are like the main things I would enjoy doing. But I was going to say, like, you were talking about like having the courage to like talk to somebody. I wanted to kind of go back to that for a second. Like you having the courage in a lot of different ways. Um, Talking to a stranger or talking to friends, or like if you're feeling you're having problems, like talk to somebody. But another place that courage takes place in when it comes to growth, in the business side of things, is the courage to say no to jobs. As you were talking about, like, oh, you're worried, like, oh, where's the next job going to come from? And somebody asked me recently, like, well, how do you get higher paying jobs? Because on Reddit, because they're like, oh, I'm like, feel like I'm stuck here. I'm afraid to raise my rates, like, well, you're going to have to say no to some people.
Yeah.
You're going to have to say no in order to like establish that you need to be paid a higher rate. I recently got like a job offer from like a huge company, like billions and billions of dollars company, to create images for them, whatever. And they told me what their budget was. And I was like, well, it's kind of low. And they said, we want a full buyout of all the images. And I was just like, your budget is way, way, way too low. Because that's very expensive. Because they were talking about using it for advertising. And when you're talking about a $1 billion company using your images for advertising, that's a lot of money for licensing those images. And what I said to them was, okay, here's my counter offer. Instead of all of the photos, and I was probably going to like create like hundreds of images in the course of doing this project, I said, how about you choose 10? And I will give you a license to use those internally in editorial stuff, whatever, blah, 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 for 2 years. That is well within your budget, what you're talking about, like what budget we discussed. And, you're not going to want to use 100 images anyway. Like that's the thing that like most people like on the other side, when they're planning, they go like, we want to have them all. Like you're not going to use them all. The chances are you're not, like, especially depending on the project, like they're not going to use 150 or 200 photos. They're going to pick a select few that they're going to use. And I said, and then we can come back to it if you want to use it for advertising, and we can discuss like what market you're using, because there's a lot of things that go into that, into licensing your photographers. If somebody wants to use your picture for, advertising, you have to consider the market that it is. Is it TV? Is Is it online? Like, is it all over the world? Is it just in one country? Blah, blah, blah. Like, figure out like the pricing for that. And they came back to me. There's like a lot of back and forth for like a month. And then they came back and they said, we hired somebody else who wasn't going to limit the number of photos or the usage. And I was like, okay. Like, I don't feel like there was a time when I got really upset about that. I would have been mad. I'm like, oh, that job got away. And I'm like, no, I'm fine with that job not coming my way because it wasn't going to treat me like it was, there was people were like, oh, you're leaving money on the table. I'm like, no, I'm keeping somebody from taking money off the table for me because they'd be taking advantage of me. And, like you're talking tens of thousands of dollars that, in licensing fees that they're not giving to the person that they hired. So like you have to be willing to say no if you want to advance and like charge people more money as a photographer. You need to be able, like, it is scary. It's really scary. I remember when I was starting out and feeling really scared about raising my rates. I was like, oh, nobody's going to hire me. What I didn't realize was like you needed to raise them gradually, like 5% a year or 10% a year, so that like it's incremental over time, so that when people refer you to somebody else, like your rate hasn't gone up a dramatic amount. Like if you wait 5 years and then all of a sudden raise it like 20%, that's like suddenly you're losing all of this like crop of referrals of people going like, well, why are you so much more expensive than when so and so hired you? Yeah, like that's my advice is like, like stick to your guns as far as raising your rates and do it incrementally over time. Sorry, I kind of like went off there for different stuff.
No, it's a really important topic because this is not helping the industry at all. If people keep, so many people do free jobs, and I get it, especially when you're starting out, you kind of need a quid pro quo kind of arrangement with maybe smaller brands. And just as you learn, I kind of get that sometimes, but it doesn't help when, you just get undercut all the time. And, we're going back to one of our original topics of conversation where the abundance, we're in a buyer's market when it comes to brands and photographers. Like brands can just take their pick. They can pitch to 10,000 photographers and they'll find someone that does it within their crappy little budget. And I'm seeing this more and more with friends, with associates, and just photographers everywhere. They're just having trouble getting jobs for the rate that they normally charge, let alone any kind of real increased value rates. Because for some reason, huge brands keep tightening their budgets for photography and content and videos, whatever it might be. And I don't know why. I don't know whether they are kind of seeing this in the market that they can do that. They can charge for less or they can get free content. Or if it's, there are some effects of AI maybe in there with image generation or artificial graphic creation. I don't know. I don't know about that world enough. But yeah, I see this all the time. So it's easy for us to say. I just know it's, I know you do it. You walk the talk, and I say no way more than I say yes, just because there are very few jobs that come along anyway that I want to do. So yeah, I mean, I value my time. And it's valuing your time. It's not necessarily your work, right? It's the time that if you're prepared to over deliver as well, you're going to be spending a little bit more time than what it might be on paper. So at what rate do you put your time? And when you think about how much time you have on this planet, then you better value that rate pretty highly, and have some kind of respect for yourself. But
Here's the thing that I commonly like see. I don't fault people who are starting out for charging less money. That's fine. I think that you should be educated to know, like, there are certain aspects of like licensing things you should be aware of because you're leaving money on the table if you don't charge for those things.
Mhm.
But I get that like less experienced people are going to charge less money. The In my personal experience, having worked with corporations and brands, is that they will try to go cheaply sometimes, and they'll be like, oh, like um I'm just gonna like go for the least expensive person out there, and that's usually when there's a change in management. Somebody who doesn't quite understand what's going on, especially on the corporate side of things. If you're doing, like corporate headshots or whatever, like they'll come in, like somebody new will come in and like, oh, we got to get a new photographer. We're going to get like the cheapest person we can find. And then that person comes in and doesn't have any idea what they're doing and like takes pictures using like the natural lighting and a fluorescent, like they, this is a true story. I got hired for the job and they were like, so how are you going to combat the fluorescent lighting in the room that we're going to take the pictures in? And I was like, excuse me? I bring in my own lights and I have flash, so you don't have to worry about that. And they're like, oh, because the last person we hired like just shot with like available light in like fluorescent lighting in. And I was like, okay, well, you might have to pay me more than you paid them. Will be the first, step in that. But like what I have found over a long period of time when it comes to like corporations, like this company who didn't hire me because I, asked for, they're going to do that probably a couple of times. And then they're going to realize that the quality of the work that they're getting is not what they're hoping for, especially if they're trying to use it for advertising eventually. And they might not come all the way to where I would need them to be, but they're definitely going to like trend upwards. Corporations want people who can deliver. It doesn't have like we talked about, you don't have to be the best photographer. You just have to be the best marketer. What like corporate clients and brands want is consistency and like, that you create a consistent product with your images and that you deliver on time. I know photographers who we're definitely in that 6+ figure area, who are they the most skilled photographers in the world? Probably not, but like they create the quality of images that like these clients want. They do it on a consistent basis. They, like, and that's what they're looking for.
Mm.
Um, and it's funny because um, in some cases, like their photos never really like are seen by the public.
Mm.
Like their images are like, you're doing a annual report photography for some, Fortune 500 corporation. Like, it's like most people aren't seeing any of those photos.
Yep.
Um, and it's hard for some people to grasp that's the case. But like, like I said, if you create a consistent product, this is any genre of photography, where you want people to hire you, people want to see consistency. And that's what's going to help you raise your rates. Besides just saying, I've been doing this for 5 years or 10 years or whatever,
Yeah.
they want to see that quality is like consistent, if not increasing over time. And that's what's going to like separate you from the people who are not trying to like, learn their craft. Um, like there are jobs out there that only people who know the technical side of photography and have a solid basis in the fundamentals are going to be able to do, and that's why they're going to get hired.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if that's applicable to the people coming up through the ranks, but um,
I think it is. I think it's like that they have to like, if you have a solid basis of what like we said before, like on fundamentals, you're going to open up doorways along the way that people who don't want to, if we said at the beginning, they're not interested in learning, they just want to do the trendy thing or whatever. Like I'm just going to try to recreate this image that I saw, online or whatever, instead of knowing how and having a broader knowledge and skill. Like, you're going to open more doors for yourself for higher paying work along the way.
Are there any
That's
skills
just my
that you have picked up like really recently that you kind of wish you'd learned a long time ago?
opinion. Always business stuff. Um, I don't know. Like, I'm always trying to learn new techniques, like whether it's lighting or, just like seeing this. This is something that I've gotten better at in the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. So I'll call that recent. Um, at seeing the how I want to light something, like really just visualizing and pre-visualizing where I'm going to set my lights. That's that I think that before that I was just kind of like fly by the seat of my pants and like set things up and be like, okay, well this looks good. Um, Whereas like using thinking about it ahead of time has makes that moment of when you're there to do the job that much easier and faster, and less stressful if you've really like pictured it in your head beforehand, like what you want to capture, whether you're doing fashion, whether you're doing portraits, whether you're doing like products, whatever. Like before you get in there, before you've got the camera in your hand, before you're setting up the lights, whatever it is you're doing, like just thinking about the images you want to take ahead of time makes life much easier and less stressful. Because then when you get there, you're like, oh yeah, I know what I want to get, and something else may present it to you, and you improvise something new, like something pops up. You can always be
Mm.
flexible and go with something new, but you have a basis to work off of instead of like showing up and going, oh shit, what am I supposed to do here? Um, what was I going to try to accomplish? Oh yeah, like oh, okay. And when that can like takes, yeah, whether I started off talking about like lighting setups, but it's not necessarily just lighting setups. If I was going out to do street photography, I would do a certain amount of like, okay, what am I really looking for out of this session? Like, I'm going to go out for 2 hours or whatever. What are the things that I want to try to accomplish while I'm out there? And that might be a lot of more logistics involved in like, uh, some of my favorite street photographers, like they have like black books about like when the light is good in certain parts of the city that they work in. Like that blew my mind, and I was like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Like they've done the work ahead of time, so they know like, okay, you really can only go to this area these 2 weeks of the year because that's when the light's really good there. Like that sort of thing, like ahead of time, like you save yourself time and stress. So you're not just like showing up and being like, why can't I get the shot that I want? Um, you think about it ahead of time.
Yeah, a bit of I talk about mindful photography quite a lot. It just helps you on the day. You know, any day that you go out deliberately, whether it's a paid job or just personal thing, being comfortable in your brain with what a general idea of what you're going for, whether it's, a combination of inspirations or a new idea or a new technique. And when I first started learning, and I went on my first workshop back in the day, the pro that was leading the workshop just said, just go out and shoot things that have the color red in, or go out and shoot things with just one person in it, or go out and shoot moving subject, or just like focus on one thing. Especially when you're learning, you can just try and perfect that area, right? So but it goes with everything. If you're doing, I mean, I'm going to ask you about your process in a minute, but if you're doing any type of project, having I mean, I don't really like mood boards, but having a rough idea and plan or brief or just general concept in your head, like, well, I'm going to try these 3 setups, or I'm going to try these 3 techniques or something. And like you said, there will always be something on the day, right, that you have to to adjust. But then you have that space, you have that mental space to be able to deal with that and improvise and be creative, right? And that's so
Yeah,
liberating.
I think that there's a big problem for people who are just starting out who are obsessed with gear, and they're like, oh, I gotta have the latest camera and I gotta have the latest thing. Like, learn on whatever you've got. Like sometimes limitations are the best things for you. Like I've recently like started a new project. I can't remember if we talked about this before, like where I found all this film expired from in the early 2000s in my parents' house. They're like, dozens of rolls of film that had never been used. And um, I decided to like pick up my old film cameras, and I'm taking like a roll of film with me on walks that I go on with my dog, and like photographing my dog with this old expired film. And each time I only take one lens with me, one camera, one lens. I switch up the lenses, like, each time. I've got a 135, a 50, and a 28, and I'll go out there and like and shoot that roll of film, and like I limit myself to that 24 or 36, sometimes 10, exposures. I've got some like 10 exposure rolls of film. Um, that I have to be so intentional and mindful of what I'm doing, and because I only have a limited number of exposures, and it's you think about it ahead of time, like what do I want to get out of this, and it's weirdly liberating
Mm.
to like know that I don't have to sit there and go like, oh, I'm gonna have to switch. Oh, I need to switch lenses, or oh, I need to like do this. Like having those restrictions is like takes things out of you, like taking the options away is here's a little if you're like doing anything with like in your photography business where you've got a price list, your price list shouldn't have too many options on it because people get confused
Yeah.
with too many options. It's the same as for you as a photographer. I've got like I got to choose between like 10 different lenses and a whole bunch of other things. Like I'm gonna be stuck thinking about, oh, which lens should I use? So you learn on what you've got, or you work with what you have, and you'll be surprised. Like as a like a thought exercise, and I think like as like training yourself with what equipment you have. When you're starting out, like work with what you got. You don't need to have the latest and greatest camera and lens to make good photos. Like we all like to say, like, oh, gear doesn't matter. There are times when gear matters. Like there are certain things you can't do without. You can't shoot macro photography without a macro lens. But like for the most part, you can do lots of stuff with limited equipment. And honestly, you tend to be more creative when you know when you don't. I know that like part of one of the things I struggle against is getting too comfortable, getting in a rut, and just like doing the same shots over and over again. I think about like, okay, I gotta like spice things up and do something a little bit different. So that I don't like just keep taking the same pictures over and over again. But when you're young and you're starting out and you've got like all these things, you can try all sorts of things to like get a sense of like what your style is. You don't have to be stuck in one particular style.
Yeah, I've just built a whole online course around the fact that equipment is a tiny portion of making great photographs. Because like you, 90% of questions or comments I get is what camera do you use, what lens is this taken on, etc. Which is fine. Look, I've been there, and I just feel like there needs to be more education surrounding this, certainly in our industry, where it's like, yeah, of course gear matters. Like if you can afford to have a better camera, then by all means go and get a better camera. But if you're just starting out and you're not quite sure and you don't know the basics, just try and resist that temptation, right? It's so and like you said, limitations just breed creativity and
Yeah.
breed learning and breed education. And that's, if you can start from those fundamentals, then you're going to be way ahead of most people in the field. But Yeah, interesting that you mentioned that. Now, we're getting close to your bedtime, so I'm sorry for
No,
keeping you so late. I wanted to touch on a kind of few more light-hearted notes. We've been going pretty deep in some subjects, which I love. But as a comedian yourself, I'm sure you kind of want to liven it up a bit. Um, tell us. You mentioned street photography. Now I know you get out there and do living in New York. It's such a wonderful oasis of opportunities to do some cool street stuff. Do you kind of see your biggest inspirations in street photography? And when you talk about wanting to like, oh, I've been doing this similar photos for so long, how do you change that up? Do you get inspirations from other photographers and then kind of mold their new ideas into your work? And if so, who?
uh, I look at all the genres. I love street photography for one thing. Um, Recently, I've really been loving the work of Phil Penman.
Oh, he's great.
He's fantastic. I fucking hate how good he is.
Yeah.
Um, it's just like it makes me sick.
Yeah.
Like I look at his
Yeah.
photos, and, God damn it. Because there's something about like the way he captures New York, and living here. Like it's just it's such a character in the photos, and I've had the pleasure of talking to him about it, and it's yeah, I just look at that and I go like, there are things that I recognize, like his techniques that I'm like, I know how to do that. And that is certainly a thing that I like to do. I'm like, oh, I might incorporate that into some
Mm,
things that I do, whether it's street photography or something else, just because I'm like seeing how it really like plays out, and find that inspiring. There are other photographers like Johnny Edward is another guy who just like blows my mind. He's a fashion and portrait photographer, and he's just brilliant. Like and it's just like his lighting, his use of color palettes is just like it just blows me away. Like how insanely creative he is, and like those sorts of things. And I look into all sorts. I've got it's can't see because it's very dark in my office, but I've got like a whole like shelf full of photography books, like coffee table books of things. Like there's like dance and like yeah, there was a long period of time where like movement. I love movement. I love like capturing movement. That's a big part of my job as a wedding photographer. So I like look at like dance photos and like like and find inspiration there and how like people captured the human body moving. Um, there's just so much out there to like get inspired by. Um, Also, I'm lucky to live in a place where there's a ton of museums,
mm,
um, and you can just go and like. But one of the things that I find really helpful is just sitting and watching people, and especially like, New York is good for that too. Like people watching is real easy here. Go out there, watch people. It become a student of like how people interact with one another, especially for my job. It's helpful to like see like the patterns and how people interact.
cool. I thought we'd end with not necessarily a question, but more of an experience from your side. I mean, doing 20 years of wedding photography must have given you some funny stories. Can you kind of think about one that might you might be able to share with us that is kind of an interesting or funny experience that you've had shooting a wedding?
Oh, I once had a groom threaten to kill me after the wedding. Like he was gonna have me assassinated, um, because he was just trying to get free shit. Um, uh, it was weird in the sense that like we got to the like I did the wedding. I kind of gave them a break on pricing because it was out of season, so it was already kind of like something I shouldn't have done to begin with. Um, and went to the wedding. He was partaking in some illicit substances when I arrived at the wedding, and I didn't take any photos of that. I didn't want to be involved in providing evidence for anything. Um, But we get to the end of the night, and I couldn't find the bride and groom, so I was like, "Oh, what's I looked around. I was, it was like 15 minutes after I was supposed to leave, and I told the maitre d', I'm like, "Do you know where they are?" And he was like, "I don't know where they are." And I'm like, "Well, tell them I said goodbye, but I'm past my time to leave, so I'm heading out." I delivered the images to them, and then the bride came back to me, and she's like, "These are terrible. They're awful photos. We want these 45 8x10 prints for free, and plus an album that has another 40 8x10 prints in it for free because the photos are so awful. If they're
So
so
did you,
awful,
yeah, why do you still want
why do you want so many of them printed?" And yeah, the she's like, "Oh, they're so bad, and you left early." And I was like, "You might not realize this, but there's a timestamp in the digital file, and you can actually see that I showed up early and stayed late by the time it's stamped into the photos. So that's actually not true." And so then I didn't hear anything from her, and the groom called me up, and he said, "Listen, you can keep $150 for yourself for your time." I was like, "Oh, wow, for my time, $150. Wow, that's great." Uh, he's like, "But you're going to give us this album, and you're going to give us all these prints, or I'm going to come up there and take care of you." Because they lived in Florida, in Miami. And I was like, "Oh," because I'm a smart ass. I was like, "Take care of me. You're going to tuck me in at night and make me
yeah.
soup. You're gonna make me chicken soup when I'm not feeling so good." And he's like, "No, I'm going to fucking kill you." And I was like, "I'm glad that you've made it very clear
I was going to say
what
in
your
writing.
what your what your intentions are." Um, the and You will never be hearing from me again unless I get a written apology. And even then, you're certainly not getting anything from me. Um, and I like sent an email off to the bride, said like, "Hey, just want to let you know your husband threatened to kill me, and you won't be hearing from me unless it's through a lawyer." Yeah, that was kind of funny.
Did you get paid though? Did they pay you?
Yeah, they had already paid me,
Oh,
but they were
okay.
like they wanted a refund because my photos were so awful that they wanted a giant deluxe album full of them as well as a bunch of prints. And I was like, "Yeah, it's really surprising that the photos are so terrible that you want so many of them printed." Um,
So did they did
boggles my
so what happened? Did they contact you back and say, "Look, we're sorry, we
No,
want them," or no? So they didn't
never
get their
heard from
photos.
no, no. Yeah, it's like, okay, sorry. I mean, like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. But you threatened to kill me. I am certainly not putting up with that. That is like, that is, uh, that is what all the doors go up at that point once you cross that line.
That's
Um,
well, that's hilarious now, but I imagine in the moment it's a little bit alarming.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm a smart ass, so I was just sort of like, yeah. My dad was a cop, and I knew a lot of guys who had mob connections where I went to school, and so there's like, yeah, I don't know. There was a certain sense of me. I was like, okay,
You're
really,
okay.
buddy,
Yeah.
this is you're really gonna try to like have me killed over your wedding photos? Were you trying to get? I don't know. I guess it is certainly a possibility, but like, my immediate reaction was like, right. Um, you're not going to go through the effort of paying for photos, but you're going to pay somebody to off me. Um, like, I was like, this is not good. It doesn't make good business sense.
Yes.
Um,
Well, I'd love to end a podcast on a murder threat, but it's it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time and some really interesting topics of conversation. I guess watch this space, but keep going with what you're doing. It's certainly appreciated. I love your nerdy photographer Instagram page. So keep people laughing because
yeah.
it's
Thank you.
needed in this world. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, Casey. Cheers.
Cheers.